It didn't all start in high school. It probably could have, but it didn't start. Melissa was in my class, but we never met. They were friendly, yes, but they moved in different social circles. My main girlfriend from 10th grade until graduation was Pauline French, but Pauline went east to go to college, and I stayed home and went to a state university. I didn't see her until our 10-year high school reunion. She was married and pregnant with her fourth child. Melissa also went to a state university, but again, we moved in different social circles. Still, they were friendly enough to sit together in the student cafeteria and chat if we happened to be there at the same time and weren't with someone else. I graduated from college and got a job that took me to Atlanta, and that's where I met Shelby Taylor. We knew each other through work, but had never been together until the office Christmas party. We both arrived without a date, and when dinner and speeches were over and the orchestra began to play, I asked Shelby to dance. By the end of the party, I already had a date with Shell the next night. That date led to several others, and on the 10th date, we made love for the first time. From then on, we became a permanent couple, and after 5 months, I asked her to marry me. She accepted, and we got married in a civil ceremony. The first 3 years were great, and we saved money to buy a house. Whenever we owned a house, the plan was for Shell to stop taking birth control pills, and we would start our family. The only bad part of our marriage was that Shell was a buyer and had to travel a lot to different suppliers. I didn't really like it. I would have preferred to have her at home with me, but I knew we needed her income to supplement our house fund. My little world collapsed one Monday at the end of August. Shell and I worked slightly different hours, and since we each had a car, she usually left for work 45 minutes before me. Shell was leaving that day for a 2-day trip to Chicago, and I needed to catch her before she left to give her the phone charger she had left on the kitchen shelf. It was lunchtime, and the outside office space was empty. Shell's office door was open. She had her back to me and was talking on the phone. When I approached the door, I heard, "I'm ready for hot sex as soon as I get to the hotel. I'll call you with the room number." "And me too. I can't wait to see you again." I knocked on the door frame. She turned around and turned pale. "I have to go," she said, and hung up. I threw the charger on her desk, said, "You forgot this," and walked away. I went back to my office and told the secretary that I wasn't feeling well and was going to take the day off to see the doctor. I went home and started packing my things. It's good that we lived in an apartment and didn't have time to accumulate a lot of things. In half an hour, I packed everything I needed and loaded it into the car. I left the apartment, and within 22 minutes, I was checked into a hotel that offered weekly and monthly rates. He would be fine until I find an apartment. Next stop is the bank. Shell might be unfaithful, but she wasn't stupid. The way I left her office told her that I had overheard her conversation with her lover, and she realized that she was screwed. While I was getting ready, she hit the bank and emptied all the accounts. I was only going to take half, but she took it all. Completely my fault. I had to go to the bank on my way home. But there was a bright side. She took everything except the house fund. When we decided to create a fund for the house, and each put aside 10% of our salaries, I opened an account and never got around to putting Shell into it. I always intended to, but never did. The fund was almost double the size of the other 2 accounts combined, so I didn't suffer much. Not knowing how things would unfold, I decided not to use the same bank as Shell, so I closed the fund account, took the money, and opened an account at another bank. Luckily, we had a gap between paychecks, so I had time to change the direct deposit of my paycheck. There was no need to do anything with credit cards. We didn't have any cards together. She had the ones she had before marriage, and I had the ones I had before marriage. Money and credit were not a problem, but there was one huge problem: we both worked in the same place. I loved my job and didn't want to leave it, and I knew Shell loved her job, so unless one of us quit and left, we'd still have to date, and to be honest, I wasn't sure I could deal with it. On Tuesday morning, I came to work early and spoke with my boss. I told him what was happening and asked for a few days to find an apartment and move. He told me to take as much time as needed, but to keep him informed in case he had questions for me about my business. When I walked out of his office, I saw Shelby waiting for me outside my office. I wanted to just walk past and go to the elevator, but I knew that we would have to meet face to face sooner or later, so I decided to get it over with immediately. I walked towards my office, and when I got there, Shelby said, "We need to talk, Barry." I knew we would have to, but I didn't think it would be until your trip to Chicago. I postponed the trip for a day or two. Talking to you was more important. Does your lover agree with this? To hell with it. He's not that important. But isn't it because of sex with him that we're here talking now? Please, Barry, can we come into your office and close the door? We don't need everyone here to know our business. Everyone will find out sooner or later anyway, so what difference does it make? What do you mean? When we get divorced, the reason will still come out sooner or later. Divorce? Why are you talking about divorce? Why? Let's watch. A husband catches his wife making a date for hot sex with another man. My husband doesn't like it. I don't like it at all. The husband is so angry that he wants to divorce his unfaithful wife. That says it all? This is what we need to talk about. In your office, please. I shrugged, opened the door, and motioned for her to come in. I sat down at the table, and she took the chair opposite. Then I said, "You wanted this meeting, so start. I don't want a divorce, Barry. I love you and want to spend my whole life with you. I know you may doubt it given what you've heard, but it's true. I really love you. If you love me, why do you sleep with other men? It's not other men, Barry. It's just Jeff. Same. If you love me, why are you sleeping with Jeff? This is not love. It's just sex. Oh, that's right. The hottest sex I heard. Why is it that I, the person you love, have never seen this hot sex that you seem to want? It's not that hot. Jeff just likes to talk about it like that. What he calls hot sex is just plain sex. No foreplay, tenderness, or soft touches. Just get on with it and do it as many times as possible. I could do that if I knew you liked it. I do not like it. You're confusing Mila, Shelby. You say you don't like it, but I heard you tell Jeff that you want hot sex. I was just saying it for him, because he loves to hear it. You're avoiding the point, Shell. We've only been married 3 years, and you're cheating on me. What difference does it make what kind of sex you have, and what he likes or doesn't like? It doesn't matter to me at all. The point is, you're cheating on me. You're betraying me. In such cases, divorce usually follows. Damn it, Barry. I love you. I don't want a divorce. I want you. I want to grow old with you. Then why the hell are you sleeping with another man? I guess you could call it guilt sex. This is what you need to explain. Jeff and I were high school sweethearts and planned to get married, but not until we graduated from college. We were in our senior year when grief struck his family, and he had to go to Michigan for a funeral. He called me after the funeral and said that he would have to stay there for a couple of weeks due to legal issues that arose after the reading of his grandmother's will. He called me every night for a week, and then the calls stopped. I called him, and it went to voicemail. I called 2 or 3 times a day for 4 days, and everything went to voicemail, and then I received a message that the mailbox was full. I tried for another week and got the same message, so I stopped calling and waited for a call that never came. I left Jeff behind, finished school, got a job here, and met and married you. A month ago, on my trip to Chicago, we ran into each other in the bar of the Hilton Hotel. It was a tearful meeting. It turned out that he had been in a hit-and-run accident and was in a coma for 14 months. When he finally came out of his coma, he had memory loss. When my memory returned, he came back here to me, but by then I was already married to you. He decided it would be better to just leave without contacting me. He ended up in Chicago, and then we met at the Hilton. We sat, talked, drank, and danced. By the end of the evening, I felt guilty for not waiting for him. I probably drank more than I should have, and he offered to walk me to my room. If I had been a little more sober, I would have refused, but I didn't. He walked me to my room, and the next moment we were already having sex. Honestly, I don't remember how we got from the door to the bed, but it happened, and he was there in the morning when I woke up. he sat on the bed and cried. Sobbing, he said how much he missed me and how what we were supposed to have didn't happen. I tried to console him, and that only led to him having sex with me again. We both had to go to work, and he asked when he could see me again. I told him that we would not date again, and that what happened was a big mistake on my part, and I would not let it happen again. He begged and begged, but I was firm and said no. I told him I would never see or contact him again. For the rest of the day and on the flight back home, I felt terribly guilty for cheating on you, and I promised myself I would never let it happen again. I returned home and devoted myself to pampering you. Since I returned from that trip, have you noticed any decrease in my love or affection? No, I didn't notice. I still try to have you until I lose my pulse. Half the time I'm the one who starts the game. I screwed up, Barry. I admit it. It was a huge mistake on my part, and I regret it. We can get through this, Barry. I know we can. She sat and looked at me, waiting for me to say something. Maybe 20 seconds of silence passed, and I asked, "When did you start thinking I was an idiot? When did I become a dumbass to you? I don't think you're an idiot, and I know that you're not stupid. You should think of me that way, Shell. You must think I'm stupid if you expect me to believe the crap you just dumped on me. You seem to have forgotten that I heard part of your phone conversation. Let's start with the basics. You were on the phone with him. This means that you either gave him your phone number or called him yourself. This immediately refutes your, I will never see or contact him. Next, you told him that you would call him yourself and tell him your number. Again, this refutes your, will never see or contact him. Then there was a moment with hot sex. You said you don't mind hot sex. That's definitely not something you'd say to someone you don't plan to date again. No, Shelby, that won't work. Even if you didn't give him your number and he found it another way, I should have heard something from you like, "Why are you calling me? I told you I don't want to see you again." I should have heard, "No, Jeff, I can't see you again." I should have heard, "No, Jeff, that was a big mistake on my part, and I won't let it happen again." But that's not what I heard, Shelby. I heard you say that you can't wait for hot sex. I heard you say that you would call and tell me your number. I heard your eagerness in your voice when you said you couldn't wait to see him again. We're done with you, Shelby. You have two options. Sign the papers when you receive them and return them, or fight for a divorce. If you fight, I will drop the matter, but I will not return to you. I'll just move on and wait until you want a divorce so I can marry someone else. Maybe even for that Jeff you're sleeping with. I stood up and headed for the door, saying, I'm taking the rest of the week to find an apartment and move. Do us both a favor and just sign the papers when you get them. I walked out, leaving her sitting there and crying. I found an apartment, moved in, got a lawyer, filed for divorce, and Shelby signed the papers and returned them. It was awkward working together, but we mostly avoided each other. The few times we had to work together, we kept it professional. As soon as the papers were submitted, I considered myself free and began dating girls again. Sometimes my date and I would end up where Shelby was, and she would always give me dirty looks. Apparently, Shelby was able to talk Jeff into moving from Chicago to our city, and 2 months after our divorce was final, she married him. I saw him for the first time at a company Christmas party. I wasn't introduced to him, and we were sitting on opposite sides of the room, but I saw Shelby point me out to her new husband. About 2 hours into the party, after all the speeches had been made and bonus checks had been handed out, I needed to go to the bathroom. I had just finished my business and was buttoning up my pants when Shelby's new husband came into the toilet. I turned to him and said, "Thank you for the service you did for me." A service? What service? For helping Shelby betray me. Catching her doing this so early in our marriage saved me from investing too much in our relationship. It would probably do it ons breaking up with her would be harder if I caught her cheating later, which she undoubtedly would have done. You know what they say, once a cheater, always a cheater, so get ready because she will definitely cheat on you. And then I punched him in the face. I owed you this. She was married, but you didn't care. I should hit you more, but I think this hit and the fact that you are married to a bitch is punishment enough. I left the toilet and left the party. Of course, on the first day of work after that, Shelby burst into my office and started yelling at me about what I did to her husband, and she was a little shocked when I screamed, "Shut your mouth and get out of my office or else I'll call HR and file a complaint against you. We're at work and should be doing company business, not discussing who you cheated on me with." She became silent and left my office. 2 weeks later, I was offered a promotion if I agreed to move to Denver, and I accepted the offer. Our Denver offices were located in the Denver Tech Complex, and we occupied the first 4 floors of a 6-story building. The top 2 floors were occupied by an insurance company. My office was on the 3rd floor. I got a job and started looking for housing. Decided I wanted to buy a house and build equity rather than just collect rent receipts, but couldn't find anything suitable in Denver. One guy I worked with asked me if I had checked out the town of Castle Rock, and I said no. He invited me to look there, and I agreed. I liked the look of the place and started looking for houses and found exactly what I was looking for in an area called the Meadows and put down a down payment. The previous owners had already moved out, and they told me I could move in and pay rent until closing, so that's what I did. I bought everything I needed and moved. A couple of months passed, I closed on the house, settled into a job, and began exploring the nightlife in Castle Rock. There wasn't much entertainment in the city itself, but there was some interesting stuff nearby. My favorite bar was in Sedalia, just 7 miles from my house. It was called Buckskins, and it was country style with great food. I went there for the first time on a Thursday and found out that they had free dance lessons. I used to go there every Thursday for class and on Fridays and Saturdays to dance to the music of the country western bands that played there, and to sit at the bar and admire Jessica, the bartender. Me and every other man in this place. I'm not usually into tattoos and piercings, but they looked good on Jessica. But let's get back to the lessons. Since I was alone, I usually only went on the dance floor when Marla, the instructor, was teaching line dancing. I met Marla, and after a while, when she was going to teach couples dances, she would take some girl who was also alone and put us together so that we could learn couples dances. Of course, these girls weren't actually alone. They usually came with a friend or 3, and sometimes I would dance with all of them. Often the girls who came to class on Thursday also came on Friday and Saturday, so I usually had a dance partner every time I went there. This is how my life went for the first 6 months in Colorado. I dated girls, mostly the ones I met at the Buckskins, but my sex life was pretty much non-existent until I was invited to a party by the VP of sales. I was going to decline because it was mostly a couples event, and I wasn't dating anyone at the time. I mentioned this to one of my colleagues, and he gave me the number of a sex service he used from time to time. In terms of office politics, it would be better to go than not to go, so I called the sex service, made an appointment, and went to them. I told the woman I was talking to what event I was invited to, and she showed me photos of 3 women who she said would be perfect for the occasion. I chose a pretty blonde, and to shorten a long story, the blonde, Gloria, became my saving stick when I needed to make love. At the end of our first evening, she let me know that she was available for other services, and I smiled and took her up on the offer. The next 4 months passed, and one morning in the elevator, as the door was about to close, I heard a woman's voice, "Hold the elevator, please," and I stopped the door from closing, and a woman ran in saying, "Thank you. I'm a little late. Barry?" It was Melissa. It turned out that she works for an insurance company. By the time I got off the elevator, we already had a date for drinks after work. We met in the lobby at 5, left her car in the parking lot, and I drove us to the nearest bar. We ordered drinks and sat and talked for almost 2 hours. She learned my whole story up to this point, and I learned hers. Our stories were remarkably similar. She graduated from college, got a job in Michigan, met her ex-husband at work, married him, and then caught him cheating. She divorced him, and then her company offered her a promotion if she agreed to move to Denver. It turned out that she also lived in Castle Rock in the Founders Village area. When we decided to call it a night, I drove her back to her car, and along the way I asked her out. She already had plans for Wednesday, so I asked if Thursday would work for her, and she agreed. I told her about the buckskins, and she said she had been there, but never on a Thursday when school was in session. When I picked her up on Thursday at 6, she was wearing jeans, a cowboy shirt, cowboy boots, and a belt with a large oval Western-style buckle. She looked like one of those rodeo queens they show on promotional posters. When I examined her, she asked, "Do you like it? All that's missing is a cowboy hat." "I have that too. Do you want me to put it on?" "No, not now. Wait until I have my own hat." She tilted her head and looked at me with a look that I couldn't understand. I hoped that she understood this to mean that I expected to meet her again. We had a good time at the Buckskins. Mel already knew most of the dances Marla taught that night, and she looked like an experienced dancer compared to the novice me. One day, when I walked up to the bar to get us some fresh drinks, Jessica asked, "Is the little cowgirl replacing me?" Jessica was 5'11", while Mel was 5'3", so she could afford to call Mel small. I chuckled and said, "You can't call my dates with her a replacement for you because you never agreed to go with me." She chuckled and said, "Maybe you gave up too soon." I just shook my head and went back to Mel. When I drove her home, she kissed me on the cheek and said, "I liked it, let's do it again." So I made a date for Saturday and told her that we would go to Buckskins again to dance to live music instead of the recorded music that Marla used in class. I said I'll have a hat by then so she can overeat yours that evening. After work on Friday, I stopped by Shepler's Western Wear and started looking at cowboy hats. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw such high prices and had no idea there were so many different styles. I always thought all cowboy hats were the same. In all the Western films I saw, the hats looked the same. The only difference I noticed was that some were black and some were white. I found a hat I liked and bought 2 more Western shirts on an impulse. I already had jeans and boots, although the boots were Wellington style, not cowboy, but they had leather soles, and that was enough for me. I picked Mel up at 6 on Saturday, and we had dinner at Guadalajara before heading to Buckskins. We arrived early enough to grab a table near the dance floor. We sat, sipped drinks, and talked until the band started playing. Once they started, we spent most of the night on the dance floor. When I drove Mel home, I received a passionate kiss and another, "Let's do this again." Mel and I started dating at least twice a week for the next month, and at the end of the dates, the kisses became longer and more passionate, and we also made out in the car a few times. Then evening came when our makeout sessions moved indoors. Mel was a real tigress in bed. She made me do it 5 times until I couldn't do it anymore. After the last time, I got up and started getting dressed, and Mel grabbed my hand and asked, "Where are you going?" "Home." "Hell no, we haven't done the hugs and tenderness yet," and she pulled me back onto the bed. I must say that I did not resist when she did this. From that evening, Melissa and I became a permanent couple. Mel only rented the house she lived in and told her landlords that she would not be renewing her lease when it expired. 2 months later, Mel moved in with me, and a month after that I asked her to marry me. She said that she would prefer not to get married yet. "Let's just live together as friends with benefits until we see how things go." This suited me. I had her, and that was the most important thing to me. For the next year, we lived together as husband and wife without official documents. Life was good. The work was going great. I had a good woman, and suddenly she was gone. We had just finished dinner, and Mel said, "I found a place I can afford, and I'm going to move." This took me completely by surprise. What I've done, I thought we were fine. "You didn't do anything. This is all because of me." I realized that I was not yet ready for a serious relationship. Suddenly, I understood. "Who is he?" "You do not know him. He just transferred to our office. He asked me out on a date. I feel attracted to him, but I can't say yes to him while I live here. This must be a very strong attraction if you are willing to spend money on your home just to say yes to him." I stood up and started clearing the table. As I was loading the dirty dishes into the dishwasher, I said, "I'm sleeping on the sofa today, but since it's not very comfortable, I would appreciate it if you would speed up your departure. I put on my coat and Melissa asked where I was going. In Hideaway. I suddenly felt the need for a drink, or three. When I left the house, I changed my mind. Better Buckskins than Hideaway. In Buckskins, at least I can look at Jessica while I get drunk. As I sat down at the bar, Jessica walked up to me and placed a drink in front of me. She knew I was drinking, so she didn't have to ask. While she was putting the glass down, she asked, "Where is the little cowgirl today?" "In the wind, Jess, in the wind. Are you here to drown your sorrows?" Almost. "This won't work, boy. You won't get blind drunk here. I'll limit you to 3 drinks. 4 if you eat anything. I just had dinner, so I won't order food." "Okay, that means 3. I didn't know you cared so much. I won't let a good customer like you crash into a tree or pole because of a broken heart. When you leave here, you'll be sober enough to drive, and that's a non-negotiable rule. Understood?" I nodded in agreement, raised my glass, and began to drink. When I got home, the house was dark, and I assumed Melissa was already asleep. I quietly entered and saw her sitting on the sofa in the dark. I ignored her and took the blanket and pillow. When I returned to the living room, I said to her, "Move, I need to go to bed. This is your home. You sleep in the bed, and I'll be on the sofa." I didn't argue, threw the blanket and pillow on the sofa next to her, and went to the bedroom, undressed, and went to bed. I fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow. When I woke up in the morning, Melissa was pressed against me. She woke up when I started to get up. "Sorry, but I couldn't sleep on the sofa." Then we had sex. "Why?" "Go take a shower while I make some coffee, and then we'll talk." When I came into the kitchen, she was sitting at the table with a cup of coffee in her hands. I poured myself a cup and sat down opposite her, asking again, "Why?" "There is no new man in the office, and I have not found another place to live, at least not yet. I said what I said yesterday to see how you would react." I started to say something, but she raised her hand to stop me and said, "Let me express everything, and then you can talk. I told you about my failed marriage, but I never mentioned my other relationships. There were 3, and they all ended badly. The point is, I needed to know how passionate you were about me. I didn't want to commit completely until I was sure. When I talked to you yesterday, you didn't try to dissuade me. You didn't beg or ask me to stay. You simply accepted my words, got up, and went to drink. It told me that you don't really care about me. I was just a sex buddy for you. If you thought so, then why mourning? Because I really love you, and I wanted it for the last time." "Well, thanks for that, but let's get something clear before you start packing. I cared about you enough to ask you to marry me. You said no. To me, it meant that you don't care about me the same way I care about you. To me, it meant that you only saw me as a long-term fuck buddy. During the year that I asked you to marry me. Married, you never let me know that your attitude had changed, so I never insisted. I didn't insist because I was afraid that if I put pressure on you, you would feel pressured and leave, and I didn't want that. I wanted to be with you, and if the only way to keep you was to stay in a relationship with benefits, then I was ready for that. When you said last night that you were going to leave, it didn't come as a complete surprise to me, because since you didn't want to get involved with me, I expected it to happen sooner or later. I got up and left because I didn't want to humiliate myself in front of you by crying. I stood up and headed towards the door. "Where are you going?" "I still have to earn a living, and I'm expected to attend the morning meeting." "But we need to talk." "You already know where I stand," I said, taking the car keys from the hook by the door. "You need to decide what you want," and I left the house and went to work. After the meeting, the whole day dragged on. I've been thinking a lot about Melissa's situation. I basically told Melissa it was time for her to make up her mind and wondered what I would find when I got home. Melissa's car was parked outside the house when I arrived. I didn't know if she went to work, but I noticed that the back seat wasn't filled with her things. When I opened the door and walked inside, Melissa was sitting on the couch. She stood up to greet me. She was wearing a sheer black negligee and black high-heeled sandals. "Yes," she said. "What?" "Yes, I will marry you. Now the question is, dinner first or dessert?" I smiled and said, "Silly girl," as I took off my tie and began to unbutton my shirt.